declare this meeting open at 3 p.m. Firstly, we'll begin by acknowledging the continuing connection of Aboriginal people to country, culture and community, including the traditional custodians of this land, the Kaniang and Wadandi people of the Noongar Nation. We pay respects to elders past and present. And a reminder, please, that this session is being live streamed and recorded in accordance with Council Policy EMCP2. Members of the public are reminded that no other visual or audio recording of this meeting by any other means is allowed without the permission of the chairperson. Whilst every endeavour has been made to only record those who are actively participating in the meeting, loud comments or noises may be picked up on the recording. Agenda briefing sessions are open to the public for attendance and observation. However, questions and petitions are presented at the Ordinary Council meeting next Wednesday. Deputations can be received during the agenda briefing sessions in accordance with Council procedures. There will be no debate-style discussion today, as this takes place in the Ordinary Council meeting when the matter is set for decision. In attendance today, we have Councillor John Bailey, Councillor Deputy President Alex Purick, Councillor Tyler Hall, Councillor Amanda McNabb, Councillor Anita Lindeman and Councillor Grant Patrick. Staff present, we have our Chief Executive Officer Nick O'Connor, Director of Operations Ross Marshall, Director of Finance and Community Colin Young, Executive Manager Corporate Lauren Clifford, Samantha Farquhar, Administration Officer Corporate Services, Stuart Eaton, Finance Project Manager, Michelle Dennis, Manager of Development Services, Cecilia Mueller, Principal Planner, and Simon Pepler, Manager Community Services, and Meta Hazeldine, Manager Financial Services. Have I got everybody? What about Michelle? Did we go? Yeah, we did Michelle. Right, okay. Thank you. And welcome to the public gallery, including past president. You're welcome. Moving on to item 2.1, we have no apologies for the meeting. Item 2.2, approve leave of absence, there are none. 2.3, applications for leave of absence, which are not applicable tonight or today. I've got to start saying today rather than tonight now with the new time. Announcements from myself. We have none other than a CEO. Can we perhaps just mention again the sessions tomorrow for the market survey, if we've got anyone watching live stream?
Thanks very much, President. Yeah, so as councillors would be aware, we've embarked on a review of our council community plan. We've had a number of sessions in-house with the leadership team. We had a really successful workshop with elected members last Friday, and obviously a really important component of that community engagement and consultation is a discussion or an opportunity for our community to have their say. The first session is tomorrow, Thursday the 19th of February. Workshop 1 is in the Balingup Town Hall from 9:30 to 11:30, and then the second workshop is up at BC Mitchell Park in Donnybrook in Pavilion 2, which is colloquially known as the Tennis Club building, and that commences at 5:30 to 8:30, so we encourage everyone to RSVP and come along.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4, declarations of interest. Division 6, Subdivision 1 of the Local Government Act 1995 states that care should be taken by all councillors, committee members and staff to ensure that a financial or impartiality interest is declared and that they refrain from voting on any matter which is considered to come within the ambit of the Act. We have 2 declarations of interest for this evening. The first is from Councillor Hall, which is a proximity interest for item 9.1.2, development application P25034. And I believe we have another one from Councillor Bailey.
Item 9.3.4, which is the Baling Up Cycle Park proposal, community feedback and petition.
So councillors Hall and councillors Bailey will be leaving the room, but the weather's quite good out there. We should be fine.
My understanding, sorry Chair, that Councillor Bailey, yours is a proximity interest, yeah, as is Councillor Hall's, because they both own property that adjoins the subject parcels.
Okay. We'll move through the item 5, which is public question time for next week, and into item 6. We have no presentations at this meeting, no deputations and no delegate reports. So item 7, confirmation of minutes. Any questions, councillors, for item 7.1.1, the ordinary council meeting held on the 17th of December 2025? Councillor Hall? Oh, okay. that was an okay. All right. Item 7.1.2, the AGM of electors held on the 4th of February. Any questions? There are no reports from committees and reports of officers. 9.1, Director of Operations. 9.1.1, for the scheme amendment number 15 to Shire of Donnybrook Baling Up Local Planning Scheme number 7. I believe Michelle Dennis, our Principal Planner, will introduce the report. No? I guess. Sorry, I'll correct that. It's Michelle Dennis, Manager Development Services.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, councillors. So council's being asked to initiate amendment to our current scheme to make it consistent with the introduction of short-term rental accommodation, or STRA, throughout Western Australia. The amendment also updates existing land use definitions to reflect contemporary changes that have happened over the years. Officers have also taken this as an opportunity to amend the supplementary provisions, which streamlines the application process for low-risk development, such as single dwellings, dwelling extensions and ancillary structures in the rural residential zone, and the special control area 2. So this further aims to free up resourcing and potentially improve our assessment times for those more tricky planning applications that we actually want to see. So did you have any questions?
Councillor Lindeman.
Really just sighing, actually, but now that you have asked me, thank you. Through the chair, I was just wondering, you've got a whole list of things there, but I guess caravans or tiny homes aren't kind of listed in amongst this list of changes?
That's correct, because they aren't technically a land use of their own. So the way that tiny homes or caravans are used is depending on what their intention is to be used. So if it's intended to be used for short-term accommodation, then it might be assessed against that, but we still have to assess it against the caravan park legislation because they're not buildings at the moment. And the government hasn't made any moves or changes to make that easier for people, so we're currently considering them as caravans.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a couple of questions for you, Michelle. How does this differ from temporary worker accommodations, noting that many temporary workers are in fact tourists?
This is a basic scheme amendment to bring our current scheme into line with those state government changes, so we haven't included any additional provisions for workers' accommodation at this stage. That would be this scheme amendment's intended to be basic, so because of that we don't have to advertise it, we can just make it happen. If we wanted to include those additional uses and land use permissibilities, we'd actually need to do that in a different way. And we are planning on doing that as part of the strategy review. So once the strategy is reviewed, which is happening, the next step will be looking at our scheme and looking at any amendments that are needed to make local planning scheme number 8.
Councillor Hall.
Thank you. Just a follow-up question. Actually, I may have two. So does the change in language remove council's ability to apply discretionary approval to development applications for this type of change?
Thank you.
In the report, if you have a look on in the recommendation, item 1.3 includes the zoning table, and in the zoning table that sets out what's permitted, what's discretionary and what's not permitted. So the way that this has been applied is that hosted short-term rental accommodation has been looked at as permitted uses wherever houses are permitted uses, because that's what's consistent with the state planning requirements. And then unhosted accommodation, it's in the report. Tourist and visitor accommodation is also consistent with some other existing land uses that this new definition is going to change because of the change of the wordings in the scheme. So anything that's still a D use is still discretionary of council, but anything with a P use is permitted. So it doesn't really change the types of applications that you'll necessarily see. There's just new terminology to explain them, to bring them in line with that state government change, with anything that's short-term rental accommodation needing to be registered on that on the state register now, which is administered by the state government, not by us. Does that answer your question?
Councillor Hall.
And just one last one. So in regards to hosted and unhosted tourist accommodation, and that classification particularly, does the Shire currently have a list of accommodations available for people, for tourists? Is it something that local government looks at, or is it something that we might be able to do in the future, noting it links into economics and tourism and other strategic objections that we're trying to look into and improve upon? Thank you.
Thank you. So we do have access to the I keep calling it national, the state list of STRAs. So anyone that's registered on that platform, we have access to that information, and we've recently undertaken a process to understand where they are, because people nominate to that register and they just say simply, yes, we have council approval. And we're currently finding that they don't have council approval. In some cases, they won't need council approval, but in a lot of other cases, there's a few, for example, tiny homes that are in use that don't have any approvals at all, are in bushfire-prone areas. So the way that the STRA registration process works is that council has an opportunity, as time permits or as we get complaints, which is how one of these other ones came to light, to flag the property and give the person opportunity to apply for approval. Once they get approval, it just carries on. If they don't get approval and their registration is cancelled, they can't reapply for 3 years. So, but council has an opportunity to suspend a registration to give them time. So if it's particularly risky, that might be an option that we consider. At this stage, we haven't had to take any of that sort of more formal enforcement action, but we are aware at least now of where these registered places are.
Thank you, Michelle. Any other questions?
Could be a bit obscure. May I ask one more question, please, through the Chair?
Councillor Linden.
I was just unsure, will it at all affect rates by changing this in any way?
Thank you.
We might have to take that on notice, but if it's a residential property, hosted accommodation is permitted use, they don't need to get our approval. It's just standard, however it's rated. So if it's currently GRV, it will still be GRV. We don't currently differentiate commercial land uses out in the UV area, so until council wants to make that call. But I think the rate question's probably better as a rates person, but from a land use perspective.
CEO, would you
Oh,
like
no,
to?
Mr. Young might have any comments. So any of the changes proposed, will that impact on our rating on the rental value?
And no, I don't believe so, because if they're all GRV, they'll still be GRV and rated individually. If they're UV, it'll still be on the actual value of the land.
Just can't get it in. Excuse me, I was just trying to plug my computer in. Yes, please, I couldn't quite get it. Okay, if there's no further questions, councillors, we'll move on to item 9.1.2, and I believe Councillor Hall, you'll be leaving the room. Okay, item 9.1.2 is for development application P25034 for 10 grouped dwellings on lot 9500 Kelly Road in Donnybrook. Councillors, we'll just go straight to questions. Are there any questions? Councillor Patrick?
Thank you. My question's just in relation to timeframes. So obviously there's a section in the recommendation about the development, not being substantially commenced within 2-year period. But given that the application is to develop it within stages, I couldn't see, is there any reference around the timeframe from actual start to completion? And more to the point, a commitment that it actually will be completed. So rather than ending up with one stage, which is a very small mix, is there a commitment in there that all of the construction will actually be done?
Thank you, Councillor Patrick.
I'll have a crack at answering this one. I'll see if I get it right. Thank you for the question. So there's a number of conditions that talk about prior to commencement of use. So there's certain things like minimum requirements that are expected, things like the bins, the improvements to the road, the on-site effluent disposal. That's anticipated that will happen before any of the stages are commenced in their use. And I would suggest that given the funding required to upgrade the road, it would be unlikely that the next stages wouldn't happen because there needs to be some return on investment, I would suggest. But as far as a firm commitment, once a person has that development approval, they have 2 years to substantially commence, and there is, depending on their setup, there could be time, some timing it might take, but we don't actually have a firm commitment of time other than the prior to commencement of use conditions, which anticipates that whole part to be done before the first stage is used.
Councillor Patrick?
Thank you for that. And just one follow-up on that. The other thing that I can't see is anything talking about, fencing or delineation of each individual property. Has there been any reference to that you're aware of? Because, it looks all nice and pretty with your standalone pictures, but yeah, it's just around, was there any reference there that I missed in relation to fencing or delineation of each of the properties?
Thank you.
Thank you. It is all one property and dividing fences aren't technically required in any development. So they could leave it as it is, but it is zoned residential and we have residential standards for internal fencing if that's what they want to do. And if it's outside of what our local laws are, then there'd be an expectation of a planning approval. But at this stage, that hasn't been nominated on the plans.
Councillors, any other questions? I have one. It mentioned in the report that a subdivision of this kind didn't warrant pavement and lighting. And I'm just thinking of the nature of, if we look at our average 2.4, is it persons per household, say we have 30 people living there eventually, and some you would expect might need mobility, so, some sort of mobility or access. And given our disability access inclusion plan, I wondered if you could help me understand where we would have pavements and where not. And leading on from that, if there was further development along Kelly Road in later years, would someone else have to pay for that pavement or would council?
Thank you for your question. This isn't a subdivision application. It's a group dwelling development application. There is a super lot subdivision in train at the moment, and we did ask for certain conditions as part of that subdivision. But as you're aware, council, we're only an advisory, or we only provide comment to the commission, and they didn't put some conditions on around the road upgrade that we asked for. So that's why the road is being upgraded as part of this development application, but not to a fully residential standard at this stage because it's not subdivision. I'll have to take the other questions on notice if that's okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Manager Development Services. Thanks, Councillor Patrick. Moving on to item 9.1.3, with Councillor Hall back in the room. This is a policy review, a council policy FIN/CP-4-purchasing. And Director of Operations, Roscoe Marshall, will you introduce, please?
Thank you, Madam President. This is actually a bit of a passion project of mine. I've been working on this for 3 years, believe it or not, with a contract management framework review as well. This really contemporises the current policy, which hasn't been updated for quite a long time and is now well outside state legislation and in particular the regulations. I did sort of want to make sure that council understand that we're not really trying to do anything different other than what's already in the regs. There is a lot of benefits that we see for council and for staff as well, particularly from an efficiency point of view, which I've highlighted in the officer comment section. I won't read through that verbatim, but certainly like to draw your attention to that. It doesn't take away any of our responsibilities and obligations as far as purchasing and procurement requirements go under the Act. What it does do really is it actually clarifies for staff and gives them more guidance and direction on what they should be doing and basically how they can make sure that there's no issues from an audit point of view or probity point of view. So it's a general update. There is a fair bit to it because it's been out of date for quite a long time. Some of the thresholds have changed a little bit, somewhat significantly at the top end. Everything's doubled in price since we last probably had a review on the purchasing policy. So we're probably a little bit behind the 8 ball. And what that means for staff, instead of having a lesser requirement or less work as far as seeking quotes and processing reviews and making recommendations and awards, it's probably increased our workload about 100% for each type of procurement that's fallen over the threshold. So just trying to bring it back into reality and, like I said, and contemporise it. Other than that, happy to take any questions on notice. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Roscoe. Any questions? Thank you. Moving on to item 9.2, Director of Finance and Corporate. 9.2.1, Schedule of accounts paid as at 31st December 2025. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Patrick. I'm learning by the expressions on the face.
No, I'm just checking if mine's actually around the January ones, not the December ones.
All good? Yep. Okay, and then moving on to item 9.2.2, the schedule of accounts paid as at the 31st of January 2026. Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. Just had a couple of queries, if that's okay. First one is EFT 32344, which is JLT Risk Solutions for Regional Risk Coordinator Program. And I'm just wondering if we can get some information as to what is the Regional Risk Coordinator Program for $8,600.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. CEO?
Yes, so through the Chair, and thanks very much for your question, Councillor Patrick. That's part of our annual subscription to LGIS. We're assigned a Regional Risk Coordinator to provide some capacity building for us. We've built a really good relationship with the newly appointed LGIS WA Regional Risk Coordinator. That person's helped us review our operational risk registers and also has run a number of workshops with staff as well. So it's a partnership with our insurer and health and wellbeing programs as well. Yeah.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Patrick?
Yep, just these two are related. So there's EFT 32459, which is VC Mitchell car park upgrade for 40,000, and then EFT 32502, which is a storage shed for VC Mitchell. Can I ask, are those two expenses part of the initial funding that was there for VC Mitchell, or are they additional from something else?
Director of Operations?
Thank you. Through the Chair, I can confirm they're both out of the existing budget and part of the program works.
Thank you. Any other questions? Moving on to item 9.2.3, the monthly financial report for the period ending 31st of December 2025. And Director of Finance and Community, or are we... You'll take it forward? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll put it over to the Manager of Financial Services and next agenda item for the financial report section of it. I was just going to give council a bit of a brief on the local government financial indicators. That basically all local governments and I required to provide the Department of Local Government with key financial information annually. From this, the Department of Local Government will compile 4 key ratios. The ratios are the current ratio, which assesses the local government's ability to meet its short-term commitments, the debt service ratio, which measures the local government's ability to repay debt, operating surplus, and measures the ability to cover operating and capital costs, and the net financial liabilities, which gives an oversight of the comparison between the debt levels to the council operating revenue. The ratios give a point in time to all local governments financial viability, and they meet its short-term, they're designed to give an insight into its short-term financial obligations, its longer-term financial obligations, its solvency, and they assess the ability of the local government to deliver services and maintain infrastructure for its ability to take additional debt. The results have been published up until the year 2024, which council achieved a maximum score of 100 for 2024. Staff have calculated the score for the 24-25 financial year, which is currently expected to be 87. As the benchmark is 70, council is well above what the Department of Local Government classes a financial viable local government and in a good financial position. Overall, the scores for the financial year ended 2020 was 82, 2021 was 92, 22 92, 23 82, and 24 100. All the results are available through the My Council website, where council can go on there and compare our council with other councillors or neighbouring councils or regional councils or wherever they like. And yeah, that's probably just a brief overview of it. Council is in a very good position compared to other councils. And if there's any questions, please put them forward.
Thank you, Colin Young. I have a question. Where did you say that comparative analysis was?
The comparative analysis is on the My Council website. If you just Google My Council, you can go on to the website and do that analysis with any other local government that you're on.
I'll enjoy that. Thank you. Any other questions from councillors on that matter? Okay, and I believe Meta Hazeldine, Manager of Financial Services, will take us through the report.
So the report I'm going through today will be for the January, for the month ending January.
Oh, I think probably, Colin, does it make sense to just go straight to the January report, does it?
Yes, that's correct,
Yes,
because
okay.
they both sort of combine in together, so...
For
no,
the
we'll
benefit,
get to that one.
okay, for the benefit of those listening, we have got 2 months. We've got December and January. There's probably no point in going through December when we've got January there as well. So I hope that's moving on to 9.2.4, monthly report for the financial period ending 31st of January 2026. And thank you, Meta Hazeldine, Manager Financial Service, for taking us through.
Thank you, Shire President. The report presented today is a statement of financial activity for the month ending January.
Can I just ask you, based on the feedback we've had, can you just pull that a little bit further to you? Because you have a lovely, gentle voice. Well done.
Okay, so revenue from operating activities is tracking favourably against budgeted estimates and is largely due to insurance reimbursements received. The percentage of rates collected at the end of January is 82.3% and is after the third rates instalment falling due. This is an improvement from this time last year due to an earlier adoption of the budget. The profit on disposal of assets is the result of the fair value recognised for an old bushfire brigade vehicle which has been returned to DFAS and now replaced. Operating expenses are 3.68% greater than year-to-date budget estimates and is mainly due to overspends in employee costs and depreciation. Employee costs include leave entitlements paid through the year, and depreciation being greater than budget is a result of a difference in the timing of asset additions being entered into the asset register and the adoption of the budget. Current utility costs are below budget due to timing variances, as electricity and water charges typically increase after the hotter summer months. The loss on the disposal of assets arose from a vehicle accident involving the Shire water truck. Outflows from investing activities includes a variance below budget of $270,000 and is largely due to the acquisition of property, plant and equipment. So note 4 of the attachments includes a breakdown of the capital expenditure. Expenditure for vehicles, buildings, furniture and equipment is currently below budget due to timing differences. However, offsetting this is an expenditure for a new bushfire brigade vehicle received from DFAS in December. Although the vehicle was supplied by DFAS, the related income and expense must still be recognised in accordance with the accounting standards. And lastly, I just wanted to note as well that some of the graphs that were originally included in the attachments have now been moved into the officer comment section of the agenda, as I feel that's a bit more appropriate to have that information together. So happy to take any questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Meta. Do councillors have any questions? No? Thank you very much. So we're moving into item 9.2.5, the annual review of the asset management plans and financial informing plans for 26-27. And this is our first foray into the financial informing plans for the year as we head into the budget process. And Stuart Eaton is joining us to take us through this item. And Stuart is finance projects. That's all you get, finance projects.
It's budget cutbacks.
Finance projects, 2 words. Everyone else has got at least 3.
Thanks, Madam President, and thanks, councillors. The item that council is requested to consider endorse at the OCM is the annual review of council's asset management plans and a suite of financial informing plans, and these form part of council's obligations under the integrated financial planning and reporting framework. The Shire has in excess of $350 million of community assets, and these include classes such as roads, bridges, pathways, buildings, playgrounds and other park infrastructure. And this planning, which is being presented to council for review, enables us to understand the Shire's long-term financial obligations beyond the short-term budget considerations. In qualifying what's been presented, there are things we know we don't know, and the plans are based on what we do. We do have knowledge gaps relating to infrastructure plan in regards to our roads, and there is an intention to employ a resource in the coming budget. The Shire's never had a civil engineering resource to undertake that long-term plan with regard to transport infrastructure. And there are also a number of strategies that are in train at the moment with respect to the Bunnings Up Recreation Master Plan. There'll be deliverables coming out of that. We don't know what they are, so there'll be an additional cost to the plans. The council plan review that's currently in train also at the moment, any deliverables out of that will also be added to the costs reflected in the report, and also currently the digital strategy that's been undertaken as well. And that's why we undertake an annual review. So as these plans and strategies come to the fore, then the outcomes from those get picked up in the review process, and our forecasts are amended accordingly. Now, I understand that the report does contain a significant amount of financial data. Therefore, the actual agenda item itself endeavours to provide an aggregated overview where we do include all the detailed plans for any interested community member or reader can do a deep dive into individual asset plans and the projects that we plan to undertake. The information in these plans will be the foundation for the annual review of the long-term financial plan, and that will come to Council for the March OCM. So I'll be here this time next month to give a update on the progress of our progress towards sustainability, financial sustainability. In addition, this information will also be used directly in developing the annual budget. And after the long-term financial plan in March, the Council's decision making will start to pivot in towards that budget process, which Colin will be taking up. I'm happy to receive any questions.
And the CEO?
Prior to any council, I just wonder whether Mr Eaton would just make comment around, probably on page 95 of 148, figure 17, that just shows the gradual trend with the transfer to reserves, with particular reference to closing that asset sustainability gap, if you wouldn't mind just outlining that for councillors.
Yeah, thanks very much, Nick. Particularly over the last two budgets, Council has made some very difficult decisions around reallocating resources. In addition to that, staff have undertaken internal reviews in terms of cost efficiencies. For the 26-27 budget, we are recommending to Council that $2,056,000 be transferred into reserves, which will increase. Now that's an increase tenfold from only 5 years ago, and that's directly attributable to reallocating resources towards the highest necessity, which we see as asset management, in addition to the recent rate increases and I guess a reduction in other services such as grants and memberships of other groups and membership fees. So whilst the rates have been increasing, we acknowledge that, they're being directly reallocated into our long-term financial obligations to minimise the impact of future generations that have to deal with a significant asset backlog.
Thank you, Stuart. Councillors, do you have any questions?
Yeah, through the chair, could I just ask?
Councillor Lindeman.
Thank you. The following future borrowings that are identified are identified but not a necessity, except for perhaps maybe two. Is but they're not all an absolute, are they? Is my question.
No, I guess nothing's an absolute in these plans. Typically, we will plan for the worst and hope for the best. So there are a number of those which are still subject to council decisions, but there are those too that may be exchangeable for grants if we're fortunate enough to get them. But they're also subject to a lot of planning before that even gets to a budget. So there's a lot of decision making and planning still to go before they get there. But we're planning for them, so they're on the horizon, on the radar, and there's a financial effect budgeted for, so to speak, the long-term planning.
Thank you. You may.
May I ask a follow-up? May I ask a follow-up question? Obviously, it's got to do with waste. The amount budgeted is in today's dollars or projected for 3031 as costs expedite?
So there's an estimate of indexation with regard to that. That's the transfer station development, I believe. So the last report council's received on the closure and post-closure management from ASK Waste Management is about 4 to 5 years old now. In the current budget, we've actually provided for consultation costs to update those plans. So the current costs we have are from 5 years ago, but they're indexed forecast, but we want to get more up-to-date information, and the closer we get to the closure date, the more frequently we need to get more updated information. So so our financial forecasts are more accurate as we get to the tip of the spear, so to speak.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Patrick?
Thank you. Can I make a statement for the record rather than a question? And it's
As long
not
as
it's not debate, not
contributing to
contentious.
debate, yes, you're fine.
Thank you. Look, no, what I wanted to just put out there for the people listening is that whilst there aren't many questions being asked, we have had workshops based around this and had lots of opportunity to ask questions. So I just wanted to make it clear for the community that
That
we
you are
have
hardworking.
gone into this in depth with support from Stuart and the others. So whilst it doesn't appear like we're asking a lot of questions, there has been a lot of workshopping done on this and questions asked. Thank you. I don't know.
May I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor Lindeman.
Have we done numerous workshops on these particular topics and budget
Yes, Councillor Lindeman.
over the past few months?
Yes, Councillor Lindeman, we have. I have a question. The graph on page 95, which is looking at the transfer to reserves for the annual budget, from annual budgets, going from 2020 to 2021 right through to what we're forecasting, does that show some of the work that I know that is being done by yourselves to target funding that is actually going to relieve the pressure on reserves? You know, where you've applied for funding for a maintenance item, say, is the rec centre considered that kind of thing? So we're getting grants for maintenance. Is that picked up there?
I'll let Mr Eaton answer, but I guess the general philosophy is if there's an opportunity for grant funding to reduce the impact on withdrawing money out of reserves that's been identified for asset renewal, then that's certainly something we're doing. And a really good example of that, as you alluded to, Shire President, is the current refurbishment works that are occurring up at the recreation centre. And then obviously going back to the previous question from Councillor Lindeman, there is some assumptions there around some renewal works for the Apple Fun Park in a couple of, I think it's about 5 to 10 years' time. That's assumed to be debt funded. However, obviously staff will be working hard to ensure that we maximise our return from grants from state and federal government.
So we would be looking to see that reflected in the, it would lower what we need in the reserve. It wouldn't show up in this graph, would it?
I'll explain the process we go through. So every year we do an annual review against each project, individual project, and we assess what needs to be done, or reassess, because it's a reassessment, so what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and the cost and the funding sources. So when there's a change from one year to the next, and a good example is the change rooms at the Recreation Centre. The previous year we had that funded entirely from own source. Yes. And in the interim period between last year's review and this year, the grants become available. So therefore, the transfer to reserves is less than what would have been required. So what you see on that graph is our current knowledge based on what own source funds are required to fund our asset plans and other longer term projects. And in order to meet those longer term projects, that's the required transfer to reserves. Okay. So that doesn't include the funding sources from external sources.
Okay. Thank you, Stuart. Do any councillors have any other questions? Councillor McNabb.
Sorry. Looking through the asset management plan, particularly for the buildings and halls, some of them list upgrades to toilets and kitchens and some don't. Just wondering where that is captured, probably outside of the time frame for this plan, but where is that captured
so currently
in the planning?
Thanks for your question. The Shire has approximately 130 buildings, so we've applied a risk-based approach to our walk-through assessments. So essentially we're focusing on the larger facilities in the first instance, or where we have done works, we'll pick up the works that we've done. But the smaller facilities we regard as a lower financial risk to the Shire, it needs to be done. But yeah, there is a plan over time to do a complete walkthrough of each of those facilities. But we've picked out the main bunch of their recreation centres, the VC Mitchell Park, and then moving our way down the process. Our focus has been on our parks and reserves, so we've picked up all our parks infrastructure and just transitioning into the buildings. But yeah, it's a work in progress, and we will get around to them in due course. And part of the resource we're employing next year is to assist with that asset planning process.
I guess it's part of that broader asset management maturity sort of trajectory we're on. We've started it a few years ago, Shire President, and we've got to a stage where we've identified, without getting too far ahead in the agenda, that we are, where there's a pressing need for additional resource there to close some of that asset management knowledge and the condition assessment. So that's what we're looking at funding for next year.
So that will reduce, I had another question written down here from myself, if I'm not jumping in on other councillors. Will that reduce the known unknowns? So it will. And then my next question on that one was, do we have estimates around the known unknowns? No, okay. Sorry. Any other questions? Thank you, councillors, and thank you, Stuart. Yes, well done. 9.2.6 is the budget review as at the 31st of December 2025, and Director of Finance and Community, Colin Young, will take us through this item.
Thank you, Madam President. Councillors, the budget review, the amendment has been developed overall to have a net impact on council, so it hasn't really changed the bottom line. There's still no surplus and no deficit, so for everything we've added in expenditure, we've either added revenue or we've removed something from expenditure. There's nothing new within the budget review and else it's absolutely necessary. If it was on safety grounds or issue or something, we would bring it into the budget review. But other than that, and else has been a prior adoption of council. It's not included within the budget review, with the exception of a couple of insurance claims. One of them was for the water cart that rolled over, and the other was to replace the bailing up Bowling Green. So there are a little bit of exceptions to that. I won't go through every item. There's a lot in there. It's all in the report. Everything, all the movements have been identified, but I will point to a couple of things that are standing out within the review to me. One of them is one of the very first items, the Federal Assistant Multi-Purpose Grant, so the FAGS grant. It was 90,000 less than what was budgeted, so that grant in itself has reduced in value over the last 2 financial years. So in 2024-25, it reduced by 50 grand from the 23-24 year, and in the 25-26 year, it reduced by another 26,000. The Grants Commissioner coming to the council on the 24th of February, so we will be trying to find out why that's the case, because certainly them grants, the pool has been increasing, so there must be some kind of underlying reason why ours is reducing. So we find that as something that major that is in there that came out of it. Ultimately, it was a bit offset with the financial assistant road grants, which did increase by 55,000, but as are not related within the Grants Commission's disability factors and formulas, so they're not related, so there's no correlation between the increase to the decrease. Other than that, I'll just briefly talk on employment costs. Corporate services, salary is on the budget by 100 grand. We expect to finish year to date. That's mainly due to staff shortages during the first half of the year. We've got various other accounts that combined are over budget by 114,000, which is related to terminations at the earlier part of the year from your long-term employees. So we have offset that with the provision to leave reserve to mitigate the impact. Materials and contracts, probably the two to note in there is the public open space and the road maintenance, which are both over budget due to storms that occurred in January. and the need to hire contract labour due to having staff shortages in them areas. So we had to do that. The only other thing that I'll probably say is that the untied surplus that we have transferred to the road reserve. So the untied surplus total was 472,000, of which year-to-date council's already allocated 252 through budget amendments. There was 90,000 worth of budget amendments that hadn't so far been, should have been carried forwards that weren't carried forward, which I've included in the budget review, which left a balance of 129,000, which we have allocated to the road reserve. Again, following on from what Stuart had said, that is to assist us with developing asset management plans for the roads, bridges and footpaths, which is going to put council in a much better position to know what future maintenance costs are. And I'll just open it up if council has any specific questions.
Any questions, councillors? Councillor Lindeman.
Thank you. I'll just go back to where I was. And, with the interest, is the Shire on a fixed interest for its surplus funds, or are we in line to receive what is predicted to be 4 interest rate rises for the year?
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman.
Thank you, Councillor Lindeman. All of the interest rates are in term deposits, so they are certainly variable. So as the term deposits mature, we will either go up or down. So there's nothing fixed in the actual amount that we have fixed, no. And we would expect at the moment that the interest rates, if anything, would be increasing, so it would put us in a better position.
Thank you.
Councillor Lindeman.
Yes, could I ask about the transit park? There's something in there in regards to the Bailing one, but the Bailing Up Transit Park, however, the reduction is a 30,000 reduction for the year. Is it only the transition from the Bailing Up and the work's done there, or is it just an overall lesser attendance to the transit parks?
Thank you.
The fees and charges for the both of the transit parks were slightly overinflated. The actual usage of the transit parks, we looked into it as part of this, and they both had the same uses last year. There was a large number of pre-bookings done in June last year, which have reflected the lower income on this year. So we think, so that was reflected in the last financial year. The bookings were already in the system for earlier in the year, and so that those sort of brought it in a bit on the budget. So we believe that the actual usage of the parks hasn't dropped, it was just slightly over budget.
Thank you. Councillor Lindeman. No, it's all yours.
Okay, the other question I had was in regards to the labour hire. We had this discussion previously. The cost is higher, however, the retention and usage is, I guess, more pointed to the needs at the time, but also that there may be the opportunity to transfer that person over to our books without a charge. So has there been an evaluation of how that's working for us as far as costs in the budget?
Thank you. Is it this one?
That's right. Certainly in regards to have we looked at, can we transfer the contract labour over to the Shire without a cost to the Shire? I haven't had a look at that, but generally if you have someone working for the Shire from an employment agency, if you want that employee to come work permanently for the Shire, there is a payout figure involved with it.
Yeah, if that could
Director
be
of
slightly
Operations.
elaborated, thank you.
Yeah, and look, just benefit for Colin, like we have used a particular labour hire company in the last 6 months, and there is an agreement that if they're employed through this company for a minimum of 12 weeks, then we are able to transfer them to permanent staff without a fee. And we've actually exercised that twice from memory, so it's been quite beneficial. So apologies, Colin, you wouldn't have known that, but that is a contract agreement.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Okay. Thank you, Director of Finance and Community, Colin. That's enough. Great. 9.2.7, community consultation for the draft community engagement framework. And I believe Simon Pepler, our Manager for Community Services, is going to take us through this report.
Before we do, Chair, I just want to acknowledge the great work that Simon and his team have done in pulling this project together. It's fair to say enhanced community engagement has come out loud and clear as a priority not only for council but for the community itself. We do have an existing community engagement policy, but I think the work that Simon and the team has done is really looking at taking it to that next level of maturity. Councillors will recall from the last workforce plan in May last year, we looked at expanding Simon's role to being more broader than just looking after or managing the recreation centre, to being a manager of community services, and he's really embraced the increased breadth of his role, and I think this is testament to him and his team, so I just want to acknowledge that publicly.
Okay, Simon, you're on. That was a big lead-in for you.
Thank you, Madam President and councillors. So the draft community framework, engagement framework, I'll briefly outline what it is, why it's been developed and what it covers, and essentially what we're seeking from council at this stage. So effective and meaningful communication is essential to good governance and maintaining trust between council, the administration and community. Effective community engagement is fundamental to that trust. While our engagement is already undertaken across the organisation, it is good, however, there's always room for improvement. So the purpose of this framework is to provide a clear, consistent, Shire-wide approach to how and when we engage. It establishes a shared foundation so that engagement is inclusive, transparent, proportionate to the level of impact, and clearly connected in our decision-making. So the framework, what does it cover? At a high level, firstly, it sets out clear principles of engagement, including inclusiveness, transparency, respect, timeliness, accountability, and continuous improvement. These principles guide how engagement is planned and delivered across all projects. Second, it clarifies roles and responsibilities. It outlines respective roles of the council, executive, managers and staff, and the community. This helps ensure expectations are clear and that decision-making responsibilities are well defined. Third, it provides a step-by-step engagement process from planning through to delivery, evaluation, and then finally closing the loop. This ensures engagement happens early enough to influence decisions and is evaluated properly afterwards. Finally, mentioning closing the loop, that includes clearly reporting to elected members on what the community has said and how it's been influenced, recommendations, and then communicating back to the community on those outcomes, including where suggestions may not be adopted and why. So this transparency is essential to maintaining trust. A key strength of the draft framework is its focus on accessibility and inclusiveness. It commits the Shire to providing accessible formats and channels, accessible venues, responsible adjustments, and multiple ways for people to participate. This aligns with the Shire's Disability Access and Inclusion Plan and recognises best practice standards such as the IAP2 spectrum of public participation. In terms of risk, the primary risk identified is reputational, specifically where feedback may not represent broad cross-section of the community. The framework addresses this by promoting a mix of engagement methods and clear communication. There are no direct financial implications associated with endorsing the draft or for consultation. So at this stage, we're not asking to adopt the actual framework. The recommendation is to note the draft and endorse it for public consultation. We would like to use the actual framework for the consultation. It's a good best practice move and see what feedback we get from the community, their thoughts, and then if there's any adjustments that we may need to make, which we can report back to you. So any feedback will be reviewed and used to refine the document before it returns to council for final consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Simon. Do councillors have any questions? Councillor Patrick.
Look, thank you. No, look, given that the item is just about endorsing it, it's not about the content, I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick. Are there any other questions? Councillor Lindemann? No? Go on, off you go. Off you go.
The question, unfortunately, isn't directly related, but it is engagement of the community. And I keep seeing this post come up about camping on the grounds of the VC Mitchell Park, and it's got the better of me. What's going on?
I don't know. Is that
There's an advertisement for camping on the VC Mitchell Park footy grounds. Oh, I'm just wondering what sort of
Is that included in this-
engagement.
is that
No,
in-
and that's why I've said it's not really.
all right? Okay.
I just
then
thought it was
I'll park it,
an
and I'm
opportunity
sorry
for
for
someone who
asking you
might
for
know.
a question. All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Simon. Right. Moving on to 9.3, Chief Executive Officer. And 9.3.1, the post-election review, Council Policy EXE CP5, attendance at events and functions. Would you like to introduce the report, CEO?
Happy to take questions. This is just one of the statutory reviews that's required to be taken of the policy. I don't think there's any significant changes, Mrs Clifford, from what I understand. I don't know if you wanted to give an outline.
No, through the chair. There was only some minor wording adjustments and the removal of explicit legislative section references to make sure that it remains current at all times. But this was workshopped with councillors earlier on, or late towards the end of last year after the election, and there was no amendments required at the time.
Any questions? Councillor Patrick?
Thank you. My question is there capacity within this policy to outline ramifications for councillors that go against this policy, which has recently happened since we've workshopped it, and the non-declaration and acceptance of gifts when council has not approved or agreed with that? There's no reference to ramifications or even reference to the Local Government Act where there might be ramifications, and I think councillors should be held accountable. Is there capacity to review some component of that?
Thank you, Councillor Patrick.
Without going into the specific details, it's a bit difficult to provide a response, but happy to have a conversation offline if you like, Councillor. Could just be as per the legislation, any of the code of conduct, yeah.
Thank you, but even potentially a reference to that then in relation to what are the potential ramifications, because this talks all about approval, but it doesn't talk anything about declining or denying and what that means, and that the council are obliged to stick with that. That's just my question, I guess.
So you're asking what are the repercussions?
Well, no, is there capacity to put something within the policy that actually talks about the repercussions?
Yeah, we can have a look into that, and I guess we don't want to replicate every scenario, but happy to have a look, see whether we can integrate that, and between now and the OCM, and if there's any changes, we can highlight that, Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, moving on to item 9.3.2, post-election review of elected member induction, training and professional development policy. And I believe Executive Manager Corporate Lauren Clifford will lead that topic.
Thank you, through the chair. So the review of the council policy EMCP1 was initiated as part of the post-election governance review and also the induction for the new councillors. It also incorporates legislative reforms that have come into effect as of the 1st of January 2026. As outlined in the report and the updated policy, the reforms clarify that mandatory training for elected members, timeframes. It introduced strengthened that there's declaration requirements now for councillors to declare their training within a permitted timeframe, and it also formalises the CEO's oversight of that obligation and that reporting requirement with the compliance to the inspector. And We've also added a new section to the policy around a provision around the attendance and expectations of the clarification as to how training-related costs are managed, ensuring that elected members meet their statutory obligations and that training is undertaken in a compliant and transparent manner.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Patrick.
Again, thank you. And look, just in relation back to that accountability for councillors, is there capacity or scope within the regulations if obviously all of these things cost money and that money comes from the ratepayers? So if we have that money spent but the training is not complete and we spend the money again and the training is not complete, is there capacity to incorporate into the policy any kind of...
That's what we've done.
Yes.
It doesn't...
So I think the conversation I had with Mrs Clifford was, I believe the principles are around that if it's mandatory training, then obviously council will meet the costs of that for the first incident. If the relevant councillor is unable to attend and there's no reasonable excuse made available, then in the event that that councillor wants to go or must go and do that training, they'll do so at their own expense. However, in the event that there is a reasonable excuse, such as ill health or whatever, then it's open to council to meet the cost for the second attendance at that mandatory training. I believe that's a summary that we looked at putting in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Can you refer me to where that is?
Yeah, we'll just get Mrs Clifford to bring that up.
Thank you. Sorry, I did read through it, but I didn't see that.
There is a section, sorry, I'm just looking it up, but it says about timeframe, budgets and attendance in the new policy. Let's find the attachment. Yeah, if you can. The draft. I'll just bring it up.
Okay, in the report, it's on page 114, I think it is.
And then number 22 in the draft, so attachment 9.3.2, where an elected member does not attend or does not complete an approved training activity, the elected member may re-enrol in the same or substantially similar training. However, where the Shire funding is sought for such re-enrolment, council approval is required. And we've also just included...
I'm picking up some apprehension in your facial expressions, councillor.
I think for me it's just the explicitness of that. It doesn't actually say it'll be at the councillor's expense, but I understand you can read that into it.
Yeah.
I get it. So
I think
yeah,
we brought my original, and through you, Chair, my original conversation with Mrs Clifford was being very specific, because that is a scenario that could happen. However, I think the wording that Mrs Clifford has landed on, which she read out, is probably more general, and therefore it actually brings it, it's a requirement for that matter to be brought back to council and then make an assessment around the reasonableness of meeting that expense for a second or third time.
Thank you. Any other questions on 9.3.2? 9.3.3, rescind Council Policy EXCP 9, Communications and Social Media, and adopt Council Policies EXECP 13, Social Media, and EXECP 14, Official Communications. And Executive Manager of Corporate, Lauren Clifford, you'll introduce that report.
Thank you, President McCarthy. So this policy review was identified, the review identified the need to separate the existing communications and social media policy into the two distinct policies to improve the clarity and governance. It's the essential content from the original has remained, and it has been split into the two separate policies. The new social media policy provides clearer guidance on the appropriateness and the productive use of social media as a communication tool by the Shire, and channel for that engagement and community with the community, including the responsibilities and obligations relating to the content that is created, shared and distributed. The standalone communications policy clarifies the types of official communications used by the Shire. It identifies those authorised Shire representatives and provides guidance on media inquiries and public statements that are made on behalf of the Shire. Together, the two policies align and support the intent of the draft community engagement framework and provide a clear, contemporary and consistent approach to how the Shire communicates and engages with the community.
Thank you. Any questions, councillors? Okay. Moving on to item 9.3.4, the Baling Upcycle Park proposal, community feedback and petition. And Councillor Bailey will leave the room for this item. And CEO and Lauren.
Clifford's got some notes there.
Yep, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, President McCarthy. So this matter has previously been brought to Council and the community consultation has since been undertaken and the feedback has been received and considered. Officers have reviewed the submissions and provided some commentary for Council's consideration in response to the issues raised. During the consultation period, members from the Baling Upcycle Group actually came and identified an alternative location as outlined on figure 1 on page 125 of the agenda. Due to the close proximity of that location, we're of the belief that the intent of that is not going to change any of the outcomes from the consultation with regards to the project itself. And there will be no further consultation and there's going to be no changes to the approval requirements. Having regard to the feedback received and the initial consultation outcomes, the executive recommendation is for Council to confirm its support for the project, subject to compliance and statutory land tenure, asset management and accessibility requirements being addressed prior to any implementation.
Thank you, Lauren. Any questions? Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. Busy one today. So, two questions, I think. So, in relation to the updated location, the plan put out by the company that designed it had talked about having both locations, so having a zip line on that side, and then, so I'm now a little confused as to what we're actually looking at as a final, product.
Thank you, Councillor Patrick.
I'll go first if you like. And
CEO.
I think it's probably fair to say that the plans to date are conceptual in nature. I believe it's one of those opportunities just to, as part of this consultation process, to go to the community with that broad concept. I think the next steps now that looking at getting after council approval is for council staff to work with the community and the representatives to, I guess, grip up that concept. Look at, I guess, some of the more logistical issues around the installation of certain components. Now, whether that's sort of the lay of the land, overland flow of water, location of electrical services, etc. So I guess you're going from a concept to getting it more granular. I'm not sure whether Mr Marshall had anything further to add.
Through the chair, one of the benefits of community consultation is what we found out during this process, and it's sort of a hallmark of what Simon was talking about before, because even the proponents realised that it really needs to be isolated to where the location's shown in this report, so that all the other groups that use that area still have the free access to that area, particularly around the flagpole, around that sort of area in front of the existing playground. So you're right, the original plan did show it on both sides. That was actually a bit of a mistake in the sense that the sketch that was provided was probably the wrong sketch. But like CEO said, in concept, it doesn't matter because what we've achieved is the outcome that, in fact, the proponents wanted, and now we know that the community are okay with. So I think, again, benefits of the community consultations. It's been a really good process.
Councillor Patrick.
Thank you. And the final question, as you can see from that image, there's a residential, there's a building next to it, which my question is, what is the zoning of that area? Because my understanding is that is going to be a residential house and lived in. Can we confirm as to what the zoning is, or that building that's right there? I believe that's a residential building right next to where the proposed playground now is.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one on notice.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Lindeman.
Could I just ask, the upcycle people were applying for a grant for this, so have we heard whether they've actually been successful in that grant?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is that the purpose of getting council endorsement?
If I may, through the chair, so in fact you're quite correct. So they're using the correct process. So they're making sure that they're not going and making an application for funding, even though that they understand there is an ability to make the application. They wanted to get council's endorsement before they go down that process and basically waste everyone else's time. So this is still subject to funding from an external party.
Councillor Lindeman.
Well, just my question is that at the time that the decision was made, it was a very rushed decision to make a cut-off time. So has that cut-off time passed? Are they looking to gain funding from elsewhere, or is this a second round of it? I just feel like that time frame's gone.
CEO, but is that out of scope of this?
Yeah, look, I think, councillor, that now that they do have if indeed council passes the officer recommendation, the sign-off or endorsement from council, I think that then gives them the opportunity to take that next step in a project management, so identifying and scaling the scope of the project, coming up with the exact components, then working with the likes of Playscape to then get a revised quotation, and then looking at funding sources, be that through Taliesin, which I understand was the original potential funder, but there may be other opportunities through Lotto West or other funding sources as well. But until, I guess, you have the permission to do it and the endorsement of the landowner or the custodians of the land, and secondly, a grouped up project concept with a bit more costing, then you need to take those steps before you go cap in hand, so to speak.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Lindeman.
Okay, so just on that, just projecting, if there is no funding and success for funding, is this going to become a Shire project?
I'm mindful of that this is projecting past the scope of this recommendation. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, through the chair. Roscoe, just back on the conceptual design again. At what point will there be those conversations, should this get through next week's OCM? What point will there be conversations had? I just noted some of the summaries that were provided in this agenda briefing was hamster wheel, very popular, but I know someone that's broken their arm on the hamster wheel at the Apple playground. I've seen another kid get knocked out. They're quite dangerous, so I wouldn't probably support that. I'm just wondering what point do those conversations happen where risk and, genuine assessment of the proposals are going to go ahead? Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam President. Through the chair, look, that's part of the next process, to be honest, and it's not going to answer your question that well, is working out that step, working out that consultation, whether it's a workshop item or a council item. Again, we're sort of not really sure what we're playing with here. Excuse the pun. Didn't mean that. So as the concept develops, we'll measure those steps and then work out what we need to do from that point, if that's okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Item 9.3.5. Oh, we'll just wait for Councillor Bailey to come back into the room.
Thanks.
Okay, 9.3.5, the Warren Blackwood Climate Alliance Reference Group, or CARG as we know it, membership. This matter is arising out of the resignation of ex-councillor Alexis Davey, leaving a vacancy in the CARG team, and we're looking to fill that vacancy. Are there any expressions of interest? We won't worry about that till next week. Are there any questions, rather? Any questions regarding the item? Councillor Purick?
Would it not be better to wait until after the extraordinary election? You have a full contingent?
Do you want to answer that? Yeah?
That's, through you, Chair, that's really a matter for council to determine. That certainly is an option. However, my understanding was when this report was pulled together, there was the CARG hadn't met for a while, and there was a need or a desire to get it functioning again and replacing former Councillor Davies. So that's the reason why the matter's been proposed to be brought to council next week. But it's ultimately up to council to determine that.
Thank you. Any other questions? That was it? Okay. Moving on to item 9.3.6, the sale of lot 58, number 70, Southwestern Highway in Donnybrook. I believe Executive Manager Corporate, you're going to introduce the item.
Yes, thank you, President McCarthy. So this proposed sale is not new to council. It's been under consideration since about 2019. At the ordinary council meeting in November, council resolved to progress to dispose the disposal process, which included undertaking the community consultation of the proposed sale. The community feedback was subsequently received, and in response to the consultation process, officers have reviewed the submissions and provided the commentary for council's consideration in response to the issues raised. As part of the assessment, a rent versus sale analysis was undertaken, which considered the relative financial, operational and strategic implications of each option. The analysis demonstrated that the proposed sale represents the most appropriate option and underpins the executive recommendation presented for council's consideration. And just noting, this is the final part that would come to council to accept and move on with the sale.
Thank
Do you
you.
mind if I just add to that a little
Yep.
bit? Yeah.
CEO?
And probably just taking a step back, councillors, this is part of our broader asset optimisation project where we're really looking at assessing the utility of each of our assets and also looking at the service that it provides to the community. And then I guess the follow-up question is, should we be in providing that service, or indeed is there a better use of those funds? And certainly as part of those asset management discussions you had with Mr Eaton and the executive team last week, that was certainly the tenor of that conversation as well. So we're not in the real estate business. There's a desire from the current tenants to purchase that building. You can see Mr Young's done a great job there in doing some analysis of the rent versus sale, income analysis, and I strongly recommend we proceed with the sale.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Lindemann?
Yeah, can I just ask, I can't remember what the initial amount was. Is this the sort of negotiated price, or is this the actual price? Yeah, okay. Yep, no worries, thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor Bailey?
Through the chair, the $20,000 for legal fees, I assume that's just an indicative figure to cover everything, and the what's not spent goes into reserves with it.
Sorry, through the chair. Yes, we'll go into the strategic projects reserve. Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Moving on to item 9.3.7, the workforce plan progress update and interim structure. CEO?
Yes, through the chair, council, I'll take the report as read, but I'll just provide a little bit of commentary. Council will be aware, obviously, we do have an existing workforce plan, 2022 to 2026. It's one of our informing plans, similar to asset management plans and a number of other suites as part of the IPNR framework that all local governments in Western Australia operate under. Back in 2024, 2025, we undertook a significant review of that existing workforce plan. On the back of, I guess, the conversation we've been having around our asset and financial sustainability, the outcome of that review was an adopted temporary structure, which saw significant cost savings and the reduction of about 3 FTE per year. As part of that conversation with council, I guess I flagged the need for an annual review and the need for potentially additional resources moving forward. It was only a temporary structure. where we're at with the timing of our council plan, we're not in a position to make an informed decision about what the new workforce looks like over the next 5 to 10 year period. However, I am recommending the inclusion of an asset and sustainability officer within that temporary organisational structure to be funded as part of the 26-27 budget. And that's primarily for the reasons outlined in the report, but also the discussions we've had around our known unknowns regarding our asset management plans, trying to close that gap in asset knowledge, and I guess channel some direct resource into maintaining and looking after our $335 million suite of assets that we're custodians of. So happy to take any questions, councillors.
No questions? Councillor Elizabeth?
But just ask the assets and sustainability officer. The sustainability part of it means exactly what?
Yeah, you'll note there in the page 145 or 148 that provides a little bit of an overview of that position. And I guess the 4th dot point there talks about embedding sustainability considerations, so resource efficiency, long-term asset performance and environmental compliance into that project and asset decision making. So it's not a sustainability officer, but it's about embedding those concepts. So it's one step removed from a sustainability officer, but I think it sends a strong signal that it's part of the decision making. And apologies, Shire President, the other part of the report, just a little bit of an update on some of the workforce actions taken. You can see there under the headings of organisational culture, governance and workforce development, a number of really positive initiatives that the executive and leadership team have implemented over the past 12 months. Our strategic and corporate planning around our ICT strategy review, the enterprise agreement, and the appointment of Mr Young, Director of Finance and Community, as well as really importantly as well, having a new focus on work health and safety and staff wellbeing. We've got an excellent appointment there with Jimmy Harcourt, who was appointed a number of months ago, 3 to 4 months ago. We've got a strategic plan regarding work health and safety, so we're actually approaching it, managing it from the strategic perspective, but also the operational perspective. We've undertaken risk registers and then implemented a number of wellbeing initiatives, including a 9-day fortnight trial. So we are, whilst the 2022 to 2026 workforce plan had a number of staff initiatives, some had been completed, some of them hadn't been progressed. I think it's a really strong signal of a good organisational culture that as a leadership team and an executive team, we are driving organisational improvements moving forward.
It's welcome news. Any questions? Any further questions? All right. Moving into item 10, elected member motions. We did have something there, but it was just regarding the Audit and Risk Committee, which is now the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee. Although we're effective 1st of January this year, we have a 6-month implementation period, which wasn't obvious at the time. Okay, moving into item number 11, new business of an urgent nature introduced by decision of the meeting. There's none. And then a meeting closed to the public. We have got one item. Do we need to close, councillors, or are you okay? Are there any questions on that item? Before I could be... Oh. Thanks so much. Bye, Leanne. If there's no questions, I won't bother closing the meeting. So I'll just ask you now. Has anyone got any questions? All right. Then moving on to item 12.2. I will just read out for the purpose of the recording. That matter was regarding supply and a contract entered into or which may be entered into by a local government and which relates to a matter to be discussed at the meeting. So 12.2, we don't have anything to do there. Takes us through to 13, closure. And I will advise that the next Ordinary Council meeting will be held on the 25th of February 2026 at 3 p.m. in the Shire of Donnybrook Balingup Council Chamber, and declare the meeting closed at 4:29 p.m.